billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Qala rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam bil lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamu alaikum to each and everyone who's tuned into PTV World and are watching World this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, I happen to be Shahzad Khan. I'm really lucky that I've been joined by my wonderful colleague who happens to be Miss Eesha Rehan. Hello Eesha, assalamu alaikum. How are you feeling today?
Walaikum assalam Shahzad. I am feeling absolutely great. Unlike India, which seems very confused regarding its falsely curated narratives against Pakistan, that too without a shred of evidence.
Exactly. Thank you so much for saying that as well, where we certainly hope and pray that everybody's week ahead will actually be going to be superb and fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to update you about the situation of the friction in between the Modi's fascist regime-led India and the very peaceful and asking for a neutral probe into the Pahalgam false flag attack Pakistan. Certainly, I think what we need to look at is that the Indian army initiated unprovoked firing late last night, targeting several Pakistani posts in multiple sectors. The areas affected included Nikial, Kuirata, Sharda, Kale, Neelam and Hajipur. The Pakistan Army, maintaining full alertness and combat readiness, swiftly responded to these provocations with a strong and decisive countermeasure. Pakistan's military forces retaliated with precision and Indian position in the affected sectors. The rapid and forceful response not only neutralized the immediate threat, but also served as a clear warning to deter any further aggressive actions by Indian forces. The Pakistan Army quick action underscored its unwavering commitment to defending national sovereignty and maintaining peace and stability in the region. Not just that, I think what we really need to kind of look into it is that how unfortunately, or how unfortunate, for the Indian government that they certainly cannot actually figure out a way of how to kind of come back, because they do actually, as of now, see isolation within the diplomatic affairs. But not just that, I think, speaking of the threat to regional peace, Pakistan has been briefing the United Nations Security Council on regional situation, where the Deputy Prime Minister Ishaq Dar Sahab has directed Pakistan's permanent representative to the United Nations to take immediate steps for convening the session of United Nations Security Council. According to the Foreign Office spokesperson, Pakistan decided to formally brief the United Nations Security Council on the latest situation in the region. The statement said Pakistan will apprise the UN Security Council about the aggressive acts of India and its provocation and inflammatory statements. It said that Pakistan would especially highlight the illegal steps of India to hold the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance. The spokesperson said Pakistan will highlight the fact that India's aggressive actions are endangering the peace and security of South Asia and beyond the region. There's been another update as well, which I do believe is of utmost importance, of how the DG ISPR Information Minister briefed political leaders on national security. DG ISPR, Lieutenant General Ahmed Sharif Chaudhry and Minister for Information Atatar held an in-camera session with political leaders to discuss Pakistan's national security. The session focused on rising tensions and recent false flag operations. DG ISPR briefed leaders on the readiness of Pakistan's armed forces, stressing that while Pakistan seeks regional stability, its military is prepared to respond forcefully if aggression is imposed. Pakistan is a peace-loving nation, but we are ready to defend ourselves. Minister Atatar updated political leaders on the government's diplomatic efforts and the state's position on current security challenges. And to further speak about it, we're very lucky that we've actually been joined by our correspondent, Mr. Ali Andaz. Ali, assalamu alaikum. How are you doing today?
Doing great.
Thank you so much for your time. Ali, first of all, let's, give our audiences update on the DG ISPR Info Minister, brief political leaders on national security. What happened within the meeting? Obviously, I don't think that, that we can give away the minutes, but for us to see that the entire political leadership stands together at the forefront to defend the sovereignty of our country, motherland, Pakistan.
Shahzad, it was a very important briefing which was given by DG ISPR General Ahmed Sharif and Information Minister Atatar. This was important not just in the sense that it was part of the democratic process to bring in all political parties and apprise them of the current situation on ground. And secondly, it was also important in order to form a solidarity because it included politicians, lawmakers from almost all political parties and from all regions. The aim behind this briefing, this huddle, was to, on the one hand, the DGISPR inform the political leadership about the preparedness of Pakistan Army and Pakistan Air Force and Pakistan Navy, as well as the threat Pakistan faces in the wake of Indian war posturing and the preparations in order to counter those threats made by Pakistan Army. On the other hand, Information Minister Abdul briefed these political leaders, these lawmakers, about the diplomatic efforts being undertaken by the government of Pakistan, by the state. And we have seen since the false flag attack in Pahalgam, Pakistan has been very aggressively pursuing its diplomatic efforts. It has been engaging not just with regional allies, but also with partners in other regions, other countries. It has also engaged with the United Nations, and as you mentioned, Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Shahzad has directed Pakistan's permanent ambassador to United Nations to call for the Security Council's meeting in order to bring attention to the situation on the ground in the region, which at the moment is under threat due to India's war posturing. The outcome of this huddle, this briefing, is the fact that the political leadership across the political divide from various regions of Pakistan and from various backgrounds, they expressed solidarity with the armed forces of Pakistan and expressed the resolve to stand with their armed forces in the wake of Indian aggression.
Ali, thank you so much, Ali, for being with us. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for updating our audiences on the meeting which actually took place in between the political leadership, the DG ISPR and the Information Minister, Mr. Atta, where certainly, alhamdulillah, we're proud to say that in the wake of the friction in between the Modi fascist Indian regime and the peaceful Pakistan asking for a neutral probe, ladies and gentlemen, Pakistan is ready. We are standing behind our armed forces, and we are ready to give a befitting response if there's any misadventure on behalf of India. Now, in addition to this, diplomatically, Pakistan, alhamdulillah, has been doing wonderfully well, where just in the morning, Chinese ambassador to Pakistan, Mr. Jiang Zedong, called on President Asif Ali Zardari in Islamabad and discussed matters of bilateral importance, especially the current situation between Pakistan and India after the Pahalgam incident. President Asif Ali Zardari expressed concern over the recent irresponsible and aggressive statements of the Indian people, and the president says India's action poses a threat to regional peace and stability. The Chinese ambassador thanked the president for sharing Pakistan's perspective with China and reiterated the resolve. Now, in addition to this, where we're speaking about how India has actually been left alone within the diplomatic front or at the diplomatic front, the Deputy Prime Minister briefed Russian Foreign Minister on recent regional developments, where the Deputy Prime Minister, Senator Mohammad Ishaq, held a telephonic conversation with the Foreign Minister of Russia, Sergei Lavrov. The Deputy Prime Minister apprised Russian Foreign Minister of recent regional developments. He rejected India's baseless allegations and inflammatory rhetoric against Pakistan and condemned India's unilateral and illegal move to hold the IWT in abeyance, which is a violation of its international obligations. And not just that, where I actually spoke about the, how India is actually left alone, in the wake of diplomatic relationships. I would want to kind of share how the Iranian foreign minister arrives in Islamabad, Karachi, to discuss regional situation with Pakistan leadership. Foreign Minister of Iran, Syed Abbas Karachi, arrived in Islamabad on a day-long official to Pakistan. Iranian foreign minister was received by Additional Secretary West Asia, Syed Asad Gilani. Iranian foreign minister to hold key meetings with Pakistani leadership. During the visit, Foreign Minister Karachi will call on the President Asif Ali Zardari, Prime Minister Mohammad Shahbaz Sharif, and Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Senator Mohammad Ishaq Dar. Exactly. Not just that. And I think, I'm just going to give a quick recap, Eesha, to all of our audiences where what India has actually been up to. Not just that India implies cross-border involvement without evidence, escalatory moves by India, media trial and propaganda, military escalation and threats. And to discuss all of this, we're very lucky that we've been joined by our senior analyst, Abbas Major General retired Mr. INAM. Hello, sir. Assalamu alaikum. Subha bakhair. Good morning. How are you feeling today?
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. I'm fine. And how are you today?
Absolutely perfect, sir. So thank you so much for your time. Let's get started. First things first, sir, I would want you to update our audiences as well on the Information Minister and DG ISPR briefing the political parties on Pakistan-India situation, where alhamdulillah, I'm really proud to say that at the forefront of the defending the sovereignty of our country, we see all the political parties standing behind our armed forces.
Yes, thank you very much. I think the points highlighted by both the Minister and the DG ISPR were very, very pertinent and very, very timely. Let me give you a rundown a little bit in technical lingo. In the strategy domain, when the countries go through a conflict, there is an exterior maneuver and there is an interior maneuver, as we call it. Exterior maneuver is basically a diplomatic maneuver. Now, let me first compare the diplomatic maneuver on both sides and then I'll come to the interior maneuver. If you look at the exterior maneuver or the diplomatic maneuver of Pakistan, the points highlighted by Pakistan are getting traction at international level. A lot of important capitals have endorsed Pakistan's viewpoint of holding a joint inquiry. And a lot of important capitals are also hinting to New Delhi to de-escalate as quickly as possible and not to let the situation get out of control. On the Indian side, as of yesterday, the External Affairs Ministry had called around 100 diplomats to the ministry for a briefing. And the gist of that briefing was to squarely blame Pakistan for the incident for Pahalgam without presenting any credible evidence or any evidence at all. And as New York Times has reported on that meeting, the effort by the Indian side was to put the blame on the Lashkar-e-Taiba and the resistance front, which was basically responsible, which took responsibility for the incident, was said to be the front office of Lashkar-e-Taiba. However, the diplomats confided to the New York Times that the Indian narrative did not sink very well and there was not large-scale acceptance to the Indian point of view on that issue. Prime Minister Modi also called around 20 world leaders and basically he has been building a case for the punitive action against Pakistan and that effort also has largely fallen flat. The one odd voices of support that they interpret, like the US Vice President, they should be taken in context and they should not be taken out of context. So that is the comparison of the diplomatic maneuver on the either side. And I think in this domain, Pakistan's internal diplomatic maneuver or exterior maneuver has been largely very, very successful.
Exactly.
When
And sir,
you compare the...
Sir, just to complete it, India obviously faces diplomatic isolation, and I'm going to share this news piece with you where India is facing increasing diplomatic isolation on the international stage following its alleged false flag operation Pahalgam, as several major powers urge New Delhi to resolve tensions with Pakistan through dialogue, which includes United States, European Union, and Russia, and they're uniting in compelling India towards peaceful talks. Do you think how successful this venture has been at the front of or the forefront of diplomacy, in addition for United States and European Union and Russia to uniting and compelling India to kind of get into peace talks rather than, escalation or friction in between the two countries?
Absolutely. In this, the most important thing is the stand taken by Russia. I was reading this morning and I was watching the news last night, what Lavrov said, the Russian foreign minister. And despite very friendly ties between the two countries, despite the Indian armed forces to a large extent depending upon the Russian defense imports, Russia has taken the position of urging both sides to de-escalate and not to further sort of inflame the already inflamed situation between the two sides. So this speaks of the success of the Pakistani diplomatic maneuver or exterior maneuver compared to Indian side. Isolation in context is, yes, that is a strong word to use. I think largely the Indian narrative or the Indian narrative building exercise internationally has fallen flat, and it has not gained any plausible traction internationally. If you remember 2019 when Pulwama happened, there was sort of a green flag on the US side towards India to take a revenge for Pulwama. And I was in service, and I remember the US side telling Pakistan that India is very angry, and if they do something in anger along the line of control, you just ignore it. And Pakistan conveyed its position very, very unequivocally to the to Washington and other capitals that no, Pakistan would respond forcefully, aggressively, and timely. And the rest, as they say, is history. This time around, I don't think so. There is any sort of a green signaling by any side to that extent. And that is the reason that the situation is still holding on between the two countries. But I would say that the Pakistani diplomatic maneuver or exterior maneuver has been comparatively more successful. If you permit, I would comment on the interior maneuver on the both sides also. The interior maneuver is how the home front gels in crises like that, or what is the success of the domestic affairs and the run-up to the conflict. On the Indian side, you saw that the GOC Northern Command, GOC in Chief Northern Command, General Vikram was fired. He was taken to New Delhi, sort of arrested, and he was taken to New Delhi for counseling by the Army Chief. The sectoral air chief also has been fired, and there's a lot of heat that Raw is taking for leaking of very sensitive documents, which are supposed to be in the personal custody of the Raw chief. And you are also seeing evidences on the social media largely, where there has been a lot of advice to the senior commanders for not assigning Sikh soldiers to sensitive duties. And there are voices within the Indian Armed Forces where all is not hunky-dory. There is a challenge between the politicians and the armed forces also. When Modi a couple of days ago made the armed forces responsible or authorized them to take punitive action against Pakistan, I don't read this the way it has been read internationally. To me, this speaks of a lack of trust on both sides. When you authorize the armed forces to take action, actually, you cap their response at the tactical level and at the operational level at max. You do not want them to involve themselves. You don't allow them to involve themselves at the geostrategic level. And then you also take a casus belli, or you take a sort of a refuge that if something happens, you can hold people responsible for the military people responsible for the whole thing. So I don't think so. On the Indian side, everybody is on the same page. So as far as the Congress is concerned and the opposition parties are concerned, there is a lot of disarray between the Indian Union. You know the plight of the Muslims inside India and other minorities. And you also see the hatred that the Kashmiris feel for the Indian occupation forces inside the valley. So it is not something which would allow India to stage manage any large-scale operation against Pakistan. On the Pakistani side, if you compare, I wrote in my last article, which is published in Express Tribune every Thursday, that if the shots are fired, we gel like hell. And that is very true. The Pakistani, I'm listening to, I like a comment by a commentator on the present situation where he said, when there was the force comparison on both sides, I would like you to ask me a question on that. If there was force comparison on both sides, he said that Pakistani army is not 0.7 million, it is 25 crore. So that's very true, because in times of crisis, we gel together.
Sir, I was about to say this as well, where how the entire Pakistani nation is ready, and we keep on seeing, people expressing their views of how, they want Pakistan army to allow them to be just at the borders alongside them. And I think that the resolve is great, and we are ready for the befitting response. Because imagine just a few days ago, sir, the chief of army staff himself was at the Tilla fields for the hammer strike exercise. Not just that, Pakistan has conducted a successful training launch of the Abdali weapon system, a surface-to-surface missile with a range of 450 kilometers as part of ex-Indus. The launch was aimed at ensuring the operational readiness of troops and validating key technical parameters. How do you see these, the Tilla field exercises, Chief of Army Staff going himself over there, being over there with the troops as well, monitoring the exercise, and then, when we speak about the surface-to-surface missile system, the Abdali weapon system, and the exercises taking place, where are we in terms of preparedness for giving a befitting response to the BJPized India as of now?
Yeah, it's a very important and a very good question. Uh, in times like this, militaries resort to two strategies in the diplomatic arena. First is the messaging, and then is posturing. I think the messaging by the armed forces are very, very apt, very, very appropriate, very, very timely, and very, very measured. So, as you pointed out to the visit of the field exercise by the Army Chief and the launch of the Abdali missile with a range of 450 kilometers and very, very capable system with very, very modern navigation system and with the capability to evade detection system and system that can deviate it from its course. So it's a very potent system. However, if I extend the argument a little largely, I keep saying and I keep writing about this that there is a lobby inside the inside the Indian defense establishment, which basically comprises the serving and retired general officers of the Indian Armed Forces, who think that there is a scope and space for a limited conventional war between India and Pakistan under the nuclear overhang. And this is a very dangerous fallacy, a dangerous presupposition on part of the Indian Armed Forces. Uh, and they cite Kargil as an example for that. Well, Kargil happened in a different context, in a different time, in a different environment. The LOC and Pakistan is a different ball game. When Balakot happened and India came and struck Pakistan proper at Balakot, my opinion at that time and the national sentiment at that time was that we must go and we must respond aggressively and we must respond slightly disproportionately to the Indian action. And that is exactly what happened. There is a lot of psychological pressure on the armed forces to respond and respond in a very timely and aggressive manner. So this fallacy needs to be somehow the other done away with on the Indian side, that they consider that there is a space for conventional conflict with Pakistan. And in my personal capacity, I've been urging that for that, Pakistan must declare its nuclear policy like France. And that declared nuclear policy should be that any country violating our land, sea, or air borders, we would go nuclear. That would actually put a check and put a fear of guard in the Indian Hindutva.
True. And sir, not just that, I think I would want to kind of establish a way how the Turkish naval ship TCG Buy Kada arrived at Karachi port on a goodwill visit. Upon arrival, the ship was warmly welcomed by officials from both the Turkish and Pakistan navies. How do you see Pakistan strengthening at each and every front? So may it be Pakistan Air Force, may it be Pakistan Navy, may it be Pakistan Armed Forces, how the exercises are being conducted, and now finally the maritime cooperation, we see in the picture, and it's certainly quite positive, and we really need to thank the Turkish government for extending this support. Please go ahead on this.
Yeah, Turkey is a friend indeed. China is a friend indeed. And even the Arab world at large is a friend indeed. Pakistan is never isolated when it comes to diplomacy, when it comes to international relations. And Pakistan has very, very credible friends. And Pakistan has very, very reliable friends. And you identified some of them. Turkey is a good friend. And so is the case with China. We have the defense collaboration between the armed forces, two armed forces with China and with Turkey and with other countries. However, let me also dwell on another side of the military preparedness. There has been a lot of talk on the media these days where quantitative comparison between both sides is undertaken, and this is taken by anchors who are not very schooled in the military strategy and geostrategy level. Comparison or array of forces, whenever they are compared on either side, There is a qualitative analysis and a quantitative analysis. Quantitative analysis is numbers. And if you compare the numbers, yes, decisively, the Indian side has got more numbers. But within that also, there is a caveat, and I would come to that. But first, let me talk about the qualitative analysis. When you compare qualitatively both sides, Pakistan has certain very pronounced edges over the Indian armed forces. What are those? It is a battle-hardened armed forces. It has got a good leadership. It has got very decisive leadership. It has got a very good training. Its will to fight is greater than anybody. It has got a just cause, and it is more gelled in times of crisis, and it is ethnically comparatively homogeneous compared to the Indian armed forces. So these are some of those intangible benefits that the Pakistan has over the Indian armed forces, and these things actually play up during a large conflict. Coming back to the quantitative analysis, even in quantitative analysis, Pakistan can give a very befitting response to India. We have seen it in 1948. We saw it in 1965. 1971 was a different ballgame, and we saw it during Kargil. What are those? When the Indian armed forces array their forces against Pakistan on the Western Front, they have to leave certain forces against the Bangladesh border, and they have to leave certain forces against Chinese border. So the forces that transit from there and assembly against Pakistan on the western border, as far as our own military strategy is concerned, Pakistan is capable of blunting their supposed offensive, and Pakistan armed forces are capable of providing them a befitting response.
Exactly, sir.
And
There's no
if the
doubt
war
in it.
prolongs,
Because, sir, Inam, sir, so we were very short on time as well, so I would want to bring this to your attention as well, where how you have mentioned yourself, how the Indian army does not want their Sikh armed personnel to be a part of whatever is actually happening within India. The Sikh community, on the other hand, has exposed Pahalgam false flag Indian drama. The Sikh community has clearly stated that India's Pahalgam attack was totally false flag. The Sikhs have uprooted the false narrative of India and have expressed solidarity with Pakistan. The purpose of Pahalgam drama was to impose war on Pakistan and the Sikh community. How do you see that, sir?
Golden Temple is a wound that will keep festering. And the Sikh community, especially the Sikh diaspora in Canada and other countries, is very deeply wounded about that. You saw the assassination of the Sikh leaders in Canada, and even the Indian intelligence outreach in the United States, where they were advised by the United States secret agencies to sort of lay off. So I see a lot of deep fissures inside India at the national level, at the ethnic level, at the sectarian level, and at the larger level. It is a union, and I doubt that the Modi-laced, Hindutva-laced Modi government is doing any good to the Indian Union. It is doing all that can unravel an Indian Union. You saw 370 coming into Kashmir. You saw the plight of the minorities inside India. You saw the second-class citizenship that behavior that is meted out to the Muslims all over India. And you have seen the reign of terror that is unleashed against the judiciary, against the journalism, and against other civil society leaders inside India on behalf of the Hindutva-less Modi government and Amit Shah under his doctrine. So I doubt that there is an Indian.
Exactly. Thank you so much for highlighting all those important things. We want to dive into the fact that how Pakistan has used a multi-dimensional approach regarding the situation. We have approached the UN Security Council, we have maintained territorial sovereignty, and this firm stance is actually highlighting and making the world realize how India is using water and media as tools of aggression against Pakistan. So what do you have to say regarding this?
Yeah, India was always looking for excuses to undo the Indus Water Treaty, 1960 Indus Water Treaty. However, something that needs to be understood in this context, and I would like to say it here, it is a bilateral treaty between the two countries signed in 1960 by Field Marshal Ayub Khan and Gandhi, and it was facilitated by the World Bank. And 3 rivers were given to Pakistan and 3 rivers were given to India. The Pakistani share of water is comparatively more for obvious reasons. It has a treaty which has stood the test of 1965 war and 1971 war. And the treaty says, it is an international treaty, the treaty says that any abrogation or amendment in the treaty has to be with the concurrence of both sides, and it has to be in the form of another treaty. So it is not a simple thing that India can just undo the treaty just like that. It would be setting a very wrong international precedence. International law protects the rights of lower riparians. As far as India is concerned, Pakistan is a lower riparian, and as far as China is concerned, India is a lower riparian. So it has to be understood.
Thank you so much. Thank you
you
so
so
much, sir. Inamul Aksab, for updating us. It was wonderful to have you with us as well. And thank you so much, for letting the world know how, China, and then India, and then there's Pakistan in terms of riparian. So if India thinks that they can, shut down or, kind of not abide by the Indus Water Treaty, there's China, who's actually a strong ally for Pakistan, alhamdulillah, for that as well. But in addition to this, I think there are a few more things which I would love to bring to your attention, and that is where how the Pakistan has banned the use of its ports by Indian flag carriers in a tit-for-tat response as the diplomatic tensions between the two nations. Minister for Maritime Affairs Junaid Anwar issued the instructions to ban the entry of Indian ships into Pakistani ports. Pakistani ships will also not visit Indian ports. In addition to this, I think every day India is facing a lot of losses from their commercial airlines because of the airspace is being banned for the Indian planes to fly all over Pakistan as well. Then, not just that, I think there's been a report by Al Jazeera, where they have certainly spoken about how Pakistan can actually do wonderfully well on different fronts as well. Not just that, I think one more thing which I would love to kind of add over here is that in terms of when we look at, how India has been isolated at the forefront of diplomacy, that's where, Pakistan's exterior and interior maneuvers come together. In addition to this, if we are to speak about the strategy, unfortunately from within India, we have seen how their North Command has been sacked, how, there have been people from within the political regimes of India, where how, they actually are opposing the idea of going against Pakistan. And this certainly makes sure, and this certainly makes us look like as if Pakistan, alhamdulillah, first of all, we want peace and stability in the region. Number one, that's what our number one resolve is. Number two, unfortunately, if India thinks of any misadventure, Pakistan is ready to give a befitting response. So what the world needs to know as of now is that Pakistan is a peaceful country asking for a neutral probe within the Pahalgam false flag attack. But, first of all, our priority is to kind of maintain peace and stability within the region. But if India or the, India which is being led by the Modi's fascist regime or the BJPized Indian government, if they think of any misadventure, Pakistan is going to take them to the cleaners, and there are no second thoughts about it.
Right.
I'm
and
going to slightly...
regarding this, also we need to highlight how India has also banned a lot of YouTube channels, not just regarding big media houses, but also with small content creators, and also our actors and actresses, their Instagram accounts have been blocked, and also Bilawal Bhutto's X account has been blocked in India. So what does this say regarding India's insecurity relating to our content creators and our media?
Exactly, and I think over here what we really need to kind of mention is, which I do believe is very important, that we really need to give credit where it's due, because according to the modern cyber warfare, I think our information Mr. Ataullah Tarar was really mindful and intelligent and wise. Or what he did was that he actually posted ads on the Indian YouTube channels on airing our national songs. So Tum Hi Se Hai Mujahido was actually being witnessed by people within India on YouTube, different YouTube channels, and I think that was a win-win. This is what you call a non-surgical strike, which has actually hurt them quite a lot. And to kind of further build up on this, what we really need to kind of speak of over here is that it's the mindfulness, the preparedness of our political forces and our armed forces as well to kind of curb the menace of how they were trying to ban the Pakistani YouTube channels and multiple X accounts as well in India. But for this mindfulness of the our Honorable Information Minister, Mr. Ataullah Tarar, I think where credit is due, it's due. So you've done a wonderful job, and this is what you actually call ghar mein ghus kar marna. It was a non-surgical strike, but it must have hurt them as well. In addition to this, I think obviously the United Nations Security Council President Ambassador Evangelos has said United Nations Security Council could meet sooner rather than later to discuss the tense situation between India and Pakistan following Pahalgam incident, and such meeting could help diffuse situation. Sikh was talking to the reporters at the United Nations headquarters in New York. He said the United Nations Security Council is concerned about rising tensions in South Asia and has also joined calls for de-escalation and dialogue, and so that the situation does not spiral out of control. I think, having said so as well, where we have spoken about how the United Nations Security Council wants to meet prior to when the actually meeting is organized, and for him to say that that we could actually meet sooner rather than later is actually something which is wonderful. We have spoken about the Al Jazeera report where they have exposed the BJP drama, because as an Al Jazeera report has exposed the Pahalgam false flag operation and the drama orchestrated by the BJP. It said that journalists have been gagged, dissent has been silenced, and civil liberties are under threat in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Over 1,000 Kashmiris have been arrested and their homes are being demolished. And this is, while I was doing my own research as well, I think the people of the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir have been under a lot of distress, where their homes have even been bombed by the Indian government, and what they're trying to do is find linkages of the false flag attack, people who were involved in it as well. And to kind of speak more about it, what the Information Minister did, ladies and gentlemen, we're very lucky that we've been joined by the Rear Admiral, retired FAISAL Ali Shah Sahab. Hello sir, Assalamu Alaikum, good morning, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
Walaikum Assalam. Thanks for having me in your program. I'm doing good. Thank you.
Sir, thank you so much. Wonderful to have you, sir. Very quickly, how do you see this smart and swift move of the Information Minister, Mr. Ataullah Tarar, where how Indian government banned all of our YouTube channels, and then what he did was that he aired our national songs on their YouTube channels via posting it as paid advertisements?
I think that's very smart of him. And during run-up to any conflict, which we should not expect to happen, but this is a time to actually participate in the narrative, war of narratives that Indian leadership and media has created against Pakistan, and we have to be one step ahead of them in every domain, as our political and military leadership has already reiterated many times that whatever they do, we are going to go one step ahead of them. And this is, I think, the step in the same direction. So although they are controlling their media, they are banning Pakistani channels, and their media, in fact, is so much handicapped because of the political environment and the directions over there, that they just can't talk about anything sensible which is against the government narrative, BJP's narrative, because they are going to get punished after that very severely, and they know about it. So I think we should exploit this situation and we should capitalize upon this situation, just as the Information Minister has done.
Exactly. And sir, I do believe that it is of utmost importance, but the international community is as of now looking at is that how, the issue which stands unresolved as of now, where, Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is actually being highlighted once again. Because if you do remember from 2019, how Kashmir, the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir has been under a siege, the abrogation of the articles as well. How do you see the global community responding to the unresolved issue of the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir?
There are two things that have come up after this 22 April saga. One, that international community has not bought Indian claims as they did previously in 2019 and 16. And their views are very much balanced. They have not outrightly inclined towards Indian narrative and claims, but they have been demanding for evidences, for restraint, and for calm, because they understand that this drama is repeated by the BJP government. I'm sorry, by the BJP government after every 3 to 4 years, just to have political gains, some political achievements, some making big decisions, things like that. So they are very well aware of that. And one big factor, I think, in this is that India between 2019 and 2025 has been labeled with proof of having been involved in terrorism, overseas terrorism in different countries like Canada, US, Australia. So that is also one big factor that the international community has not had uh, uh, inclined view much towards India. Number one. Number two, as of now, when we talk of Kashmir, or the Indian or the international community is talking of Kashmir, they're talking of Kashmir right from 1947. They're not talking of Kashmir after abrogation of Article 370, but the Kashmir issue has been reignited because of this, and people are viewing it right from 1947 that this is still a pending issue between Pakistan and India, which India thought that after abrogation of Article 370, the issue was finished, and Kashmir became their part.
Exactly, sir. And which is why I would want to kind of further build up on this as well, because there's been a lot of false propaganda, by the Indian media outlets as well. And, please listen to this, where Federal Minister for Information Broadcasting Ataullah Tar led a delegation of international and local media representatives to the line of control in a significant move aimed at countering Indian disinformation regarding alleged terrorist camps on Pakistan soil. The visit, facilitated by the Ministry of Information, allowed journalists to access and observe specific sites which India has frequently labeled as terrorist hideouts. During the tour, ground realities were presented and verified through direct international interaction with local communities and on-site observations. In addition to this, sir, how Khwaja Asif has actually said that Pakistan is not a preparator. We are actually a victim of terrorism.
Yes, we have been saying that for many years, not only saying that, but providing proofs of that. Kulbhushan Yadav was a big proof. Then in every terrorist incident that happened in Pakistan, we had tangible evidences in terms of phone calls, in terms of connections, networks, and we have been highlighting that. We have been presenting dossiers against India to the international community. But when that happened in their own country, like Canada, US, and Australia, I mentioned earlier, they were better apprised of what Indian government has been up to. And as far as taking the media to the Pakistani side of Kashmir, I think that's a very prudent step, because India has waged a disinformation campaign against Pakistan that there are terrorist base camps in Pakistani Azad Kashmir, and they are preparing for waging attacks against India, and they were actually building up a casus belli for some operation in that area, which has been, I think, thwarted very well by government of Pakistan. Pakistan has always been very forthcoming towards India in resolution of disputes. We have always asked them to come to the table and
Much for saying that. Thank you so much for saying that, sir. We're actually running out short of time, but thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your wonderful contribution. And it's really amazing to see that, people like you, Janal Sahab, who was before on our show as well, that we have been at the forefront of making sure that the world gets to know about the true facts and the honest facts which actually stand with Pakistan. We have the audios, we have the visuals which we have been sharing with our audiences. Thank you so much, sir, for your time. It was wonderful to have you with us as well. And for everybody who's out there, ladies and gentlemen, before we wrap up, I think I'm going to come back to my point where I've spoken about it before. The entire Pakistan speaks about it. Pakistan wants peace and stability within this region, and that's what Pakistan has always wanted. But if the Indian government, which is led by the Modi's fascist ideas, or the BJP's Indian government, thinks of any misadventure, the entire Pakistan nation stands behind our armed forces, and we are ready for a befitting response if in case India thinks of any misadventure. Until next time, look after yourselves. Allah Hafiz. Good morning. Pakistan Zindabad. Pak Army Paindabad.